What is the creepiest thing that happened in the dead of night? I live in a flat with my 2 cats. Front door leads to the street. Middle of the night, about 12:30 am. I was asleep in bed, but the cats started playing and making noise, so it woke me. I rolled over and started to fall back to sleep. Then my cats, who were actually sleeping next to me, started growling. I listened and heard noise at my front door. I crept out of bed and stood looking at my definitely locked door. I heard a click and watched as the handle pushed down and the door started to open. I could see a shadow through the glass. I switched the hall light on and whoever it was ran away. I bolted to the door and slammed it shut again. Police came out, assessed the damage to my door, and told me to install deadbolts. As a female, living alone who often had a cigarette outside the front, it absolutely terrified me. I'm definitely more aware of being so visible and being alone now. I'm so thankful my cats act like guard dogs. I used to live alone with my cat. I once woke up in the middle of the night because I heard a sound down the hall. I sat up in bed and saw that the cat was laying on the bed next to me. So I was terrified when I saw what looked like a small animal walking down the hall toward my bedroom. In my moment of panic, I looked back at my cat next to me, when to my surprise, it was actually a pillow next to me. The animal walking towards my bedroom was my cat, after getting up for a midnight potty break. My ex once sat up straight and said, "Matter of fact, things often happen at night." Then went straight back to sleep. I mean, yeah. I live on a farm and I have a window that faces out to a very tall tree. My bed was set up to where I could look out the window. There was something about 6 feet tall, not human-like, then ran across my yard on all fours and got up into the tree in 2 arm swings. It must have seen me because it sat there and watched me for 10 minutes. It was real because when I went out in the morning, there were 2 very deep claw marks going up the tree. For context, when I was maybe 10 to 11, me and my brother shared the room. He's autistic, so a little different kid. He's 5 years younger than me. I wake up in middle of the night, laying on my back. There's a big bump under the blanket on my legs. Something is on my legs and it's moving a little. After few horrifying minutes I pull the cover away to find my little brother sleeping on my legs. Worst scare ever. A few years ago in New York City there was a transformer explosion at the same time as there was very low cloud cover. The sky lit up a bright blue for miles and there was the sound of electricity in the air. Could have sworn aliens had dropped by. Another one, woke up to the color of flames on our blinds. Went out on the balcony and a cloud of fire was just coming out of a manhole in front of our building. Apparently manhole fires and explosions are just normal in New York City, but certainly was terrifying in the moment. One summer night I was cycling home. I decided to take a shortcut through a forested area. It was pitch black in there and completely silent. My lights weren't working, I was just navigating, based on me knowing the area well enough. I'm cycling along the bend in the road, when suddenly I hear an animal scream really close by. Spooked and reacting completely out of instinct, I blurt out the most primeval monkey sounding yell that ever pierced the dead of night. And that's how I got my first hand confirmation that we are indeed descendant from apes. I had recently moved into my own apartment with my young kid and cat. I heard my cupboard slam shut in the middle of the night, woke me up out of a dead sleep. It was at that moment I discovered I was not a take flight kind of person. I jumped out of bed ready to murder whoever was in my house. It was my cat. He smelled his dry food in the cupboard and decided to help himself at 3 am. I was sleepwalking, left my house naked, and woke up in a park 2 blocks down. Had to have pooped too because I smelled natural. When I came to, went home and washed my butt cheeks and feet. My roommate who is male came into my room late one night. I was still awake. I was curious what he was doing there, so I remained silent and pretended to be sleeping. He then lifted my blanket at the back to reveal my naked feet. I then heard him unzip his pants and then I heard fap fap fap. After a while a warm liquid fell on my feet and my roommate wiped it off with a cloth. I was too terrified to confront him about it, so I did nothing and pretended to be asleep the whole time. The next day I had to pretend that everything was normal around him, but I packed a suitcase and left forever later that day. I went to get a glass of water in the dead of night. As I was heading back, a clear voice spoke out of the empty living room. Not just clear, but loud. Very loud. I'll never forget the words it spoke. A vast virus database has been updated. Fucking PC. Wasn't exactly dead of night but dusk. Me and my mates were teenagers and camping out. Sat on top of a hill, and there's all foreground our tents at the bottom of the bank. Suddenly my friend's mum calls her from the farm house a couple fields away asking where we are. She was so panicked. Replied how we were down in the bottom field still. Why? She told us to get down and move towards the house. I won't drop the name of the guy cause you'll know where I'm from, but a gunman had shot 20 people at random and had escaped into the woods nearby, but still hadn't been caught and was still armed. We had heard sirens, but thought nothing of it. We are sat there looking at these woods at the time with fog all around us and low light except for a giveaway campfire. Fuck me, I've never moved as quickly. When I was a live-in babysitter, 16F, in the early 90s one summer, the family and I lived in the middle of nowhere in this old VT farmhouse. My boss was a single mom who was getting her master's degree that summer, while I took care of her 2 kids. We were very isolated, and when she was at school, sometimes until midnight studying, we didn't have a car. Just a landline and barely any radio or TV reception. Her boyfriend would come up here and there. He was this really great funny guy who the kids loved and who was very nice to, and 100% appropriate with, me. We all had big senses of humor, and loved to play practical jokes on one another. The house had a big wrap-around porch. I would often leave the big kitchen door, a side door towards the back of the house, open so that we could get a nice breeze through the screen door there. It got ridiculously hot in this area and there was zero air in this stuffy house. One night after the kids had gone to sleep, I was up pretty late waiting for the mom to come home before going to bed myself. It wasn't necessary that I wait up, but I liked to read late, and she liked to hear about the kids' day. She had mentioned that morning that her boyfriend might be driving up tonight, but she wasn't sure. That night, I was sitting at the kitchen table reading. There was a nice breeze, so I had the wooden door open and the screen door latched. As usual, the only sounds were crickets and the wind. Out of nowhere, I heard these heavy clomping footsteps walking slowly around the front of the porch. At first, I was a little taken aback and began to freak out. Then, I remembered that the boyfriend was probably coming that night, so I figured it was him playing a joke and trying to scare me. I hadn't heard a car pull into the driveway, but he was an expert level prankster, so he wolf parked on the road, so he didn't give himself away. After a few more footsteps, I got up to hide behind the solid kitchen door so that I could get the jump on him and scare him before he scared me. Just as the footsteps were at the door, I jumped out with my arms in the air and yelled "BOOO, ha ha ha." I was all proud of myself until I saw that my victim was a massive and now totally freaked and angry raccoon. Instead of scaring the damned thing, my surprise had the opposite effect. This massive beast of an animal jumped up onto the screen door where it latched its claws into the wooden frame and started to shake the entire door violently. Have you ever heard a raccoon scream? If you haven't, let me just tell you that it is the worst sound you will ever hear, like nails down a chalkboard, combined with the shrieking of a cat being skinned alive. Add the visual to this sound and I damn near needed a change of underpants. At this point, I too was screaming, but managed to back up enough to grab the big wooden kitchen door and slam it shut. All the while, the raccoon kept screaming and shaking, and I kept thanking my lucky stars that I had latched the screen door closed that night, so the wind wouldn't blow it open and let the bugs in. The raccoon took off some minutes later, but it took me a good half hour and a massive cup of sleepy time tea to peel myself off of the ceiling and come back to reality. It was absolutely boiling inside without any breeze, though, so I had just opened the big wooden door again. The screen door was still latched and not entirely shredded. I couldn't open the windows in that room because the windows had been painted shut. I figured I was just going to cool down a bit and then head up to bed. That was when I heard the footsteps on the porch again. I don't know what possessed me, but instead of closing the kitchen door again, I grabbed one of the kids' baseball bats and came at the door swinging and yelling, "Get off! Go away," just as the boyfriend came around the corner completely terrified that I had lost the plot and that he was done for. Once I realized it was him, I vaguely recall yelling at him for trying to scare a teenage girl alone in the mountains, for which he apologized profusely. He had thought the mom was home, awake, and that she had just parked in the garage, and him walking me to the kitchen table, sitting me down, and getting the full story. To this day, it is one of the scariest experiences of my life. But it is also one of funniest things we all remember from that summer. Even though the kids slept through it all, miracle of miracles. You'll ever have a poster decide to fall off the wall in the middle of the night? Most of the problems I experience at night come down to my own damn fault. I love listening to scary story narrations, and one night I was falling asleep listening to one of my favorites at the time. I don't remember what woke me up, but all I remember was hearing someone speaking to me in the dark. I practically jumped awake and bolted for the kitchen where the knives were, only to realize that I was on hour 8 of a 10-hour horror special. Complete silence. I live in a large city. Freaky as hell. It's always my own children that get me. My 6-year in a flowy nightgown in the pitch black moving slowly toward me from the end of the hallway. Or one of them just standing there next to my bed staring at me, willing me to wake up. I do and then freak out. There's another face 2 inches from mine. Last week my 3-year-old started screaming like a banshee. Legit thought someone must have climbed in her window and was murdering her. I run in there and she'd fallen off her bed onto our very soft carpet. Years have been shaved off my life. Used to live out in the countryside of the Colorado mountains. 2 AM. Still awake watching YouTube videos about war stories or something when I heard a blood-curdling deep lung scream echoing through the woods. It scared me so bad I had to grab a second blanket and bunker down and try to sleep. Ended up taking melatonin just to get some sleep. I was scared shitless for weeks anytime my head would remind me of the incident and anytime I had to chop wood out back. Then I saw this video of a mountain lion scream. It was identical to what I heard. Had a big ooh moment there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to consider the idea to maybe think about potentially subscribing. Peace.